peaceful cowboy eating beans by a campfire? Yeah. That image falls apart fast once you hear the truth. Real cowboy food wasn't comforting or heroic. It was harsh, strange, and built purely around survival, not taste or choice. And this is where the movie version completely lies to you. We've all seen the scene. A lone cowboy, boots kicked out, tin plate of beans balanced on his knee, fire crackling, sunset painted across the sky. Calm, quiet, almost poetic. But that version barely existed. Real cattle drives weren't peaceful moments stitched together by sunsets. They were long, grinding stretches of hunger, repetition, and pressure. Food wasn't about enjoying the moment. It was about staying upright in the saddle tomorrow. The reality was brutally monotonous. The same meals over and over, prepared under stress, dust in the air, exhaustion baked into every movement. And when supplies ran thin, creativity turned desperate fast. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was questioned. This wasn't campfire comfort food. It was survival eating, gritty, strange, and sometimes hard to believe. And once you see it clearly, that romantic image never looks the same again. And here's the problem nobody in the movies ever explains. These cattle drives lasted months, pushing hundreds of miles through empty land with no towns, no stores, no backup plan. Once the drive started, that was it. Every food decision came down to one thing: survival. Calories mattered, shelf life mattered, weight mattered, flavor didn't, variety didn't. Out of that reality came the so-called holy trinity of cowboy food: beef, beans, and biscuits, chosen not because they were good, but because they kept men alive. This part always shocks people. Cowboys were literally riding alongside thousands of cattle, yet fresh steak was almost non-existent. Those animals weren't food, they were money, walking profit. Slaughtering a healthy steer was unthinkable. It only happened if an animal was sick, injured, or too weak to continue. When that rare moment came, fresh beef felt like a luxury, not a given. Most days, despite the endless herd, the cowboys went without it. And this is where reality really sets in. Most of the beef the cowboys ate wasn't fresh. It was jerky. Not the soft, smoky stuff you buy today. Trail jerky was sliced thin, heavily salted, and dried under the sun until it was as stiff as a board. Chewing it took effort. Sometimes soaking it took patience, but it didn't rot. And on the trail, that mattered more than taste ever could. Nothing went to waste, ever. After frying tough cuts of beef, the cook used the leftover grease, tossed in flour, and turned it into thick gravy called sop, or Texas butter. That rich, greasy sauce got poured over biscuits, stretching every ounce of flavor and fat. It was survival cooking, early nose-to-tail eating, born from necessity, not trends. And just when you think beef was the real fuel, beans quietly took over. Pinto beans were the backbone of the cowboy diet. Cheap, filling, easy to haul, and packed with energy. Cowboys depended on them day after day, calling them prairie fuel for a reason. These beans powered brutal days in the saddle, long night watches, and endless miles under the sun. This part was pure patience. Beans weren't tossed on the fire and forgotten. The cook started soaking them early in the day, letting the wagon's constant movement help soften them. Once the camp was set, the pot went straight onto the fire, slow cooking all night. Meals were always planned for a full day. It was labor-heavy, repetitive, but dependable.
See how it is?
Bread showed the biggest contrast on the trail. On good days, it meant warm sourdough biscuits. On bad ones, it meant hardtack, dry, punishing slabs that barely qualified as food. Same purpose, wildly different experience. And this is where the cook's reputation was made or destroyed. Sourdough biscuits weren't just bread, they were proof of skill. The sourdough starter was a living thing, guarded like treasure. Cooks fed it daily with flour and water, And when nights turned cold, some even slept with the crock to keep it alive. Good biscuits boosted morale instantly. Bad ones? Cowboys remembered that too. Hardtack was survival in its harshest form, just flour, water, and salt, baked until rock hard and nearly indestructible. Cowboys called it gun wadding for a reason. To eat it, you usually had to soak it in coffee first.
For hungry cowboys out on the range, nothing hits the spot quite like the chuck wagon. Scott Simon of NPR has been sampling the menu.
Kent and Shannon Rollins offer kindness.
More coffee, brother? Thanks very much.
And hot coffee.
Now here's the real game changer. In 1866, Charles Goodnight introduced the chuck wagon, a converted army wagon turned rolling kitchen. It carried food, tools, spices, cookware, and supplies for the entire crew. This wasn't just storage, it was the center of camp life. Without the chuck wagon, long cattle drives as we know them simply wouldn't have worked. And ruling that wagon was one man, Cookie. He ranked just below the trail boss and was often the highest paid hand on the drive. A good cook kept morale alive. A bad one could ruin everything. Cowboys flat out refused jobs if they knew the food would be terrible. On the trail, Cookie wasn't just a cook, he was power. But Cookie's job didn't stop at food. He patched wounds, pulled teeth, trimmed hair, and guarded the crew's money. At night, he even helped guide the drive, pointing the chuck wagon toward the North Star so the trail boss knew the morning's direction.
Hi, I'm Guadalupe Red, and this is Guadalupe Red and the Calf Fries. And what we do is chuck wagon demonstrations, how they used to cook, our ancestors. We cooked everything in Dutch ovens or on an open fire, just very similar like they did when during the wagon trains and the cattle drives back in the early 1800s. Currently, we're refurbishing a wagon, a 1890 TG Mant to be our chuck wagon that we'll use eventually. I've been doing this for about 15 years.
And around the chuck wagon, rules were law. No riding close enough to kick dust into the food. No eating until the cook called, "Come and get it." Meals were quiet. Eat, move away, don't linger. Leaving food on your plate was a serious insult. Even coffee had etiquette. If someone yelled, "Man at the pot," you poured for everyone who wanted a cup. Now, this is where things turn shocking. Cowboys lived by one hard rule: waste nothing. When supplies ran low or opportunity appeared, every part of an animal or the land became potential food. Comfort disappeared, survival took over, and what ended up in the pot would make most people hesitate today. At the top of this no-waste food chain sat a dish with a name as rough as the trail itself: son of a gun stew. It was usually made when a young, unweaned calf was too weak to continue. As cowboys like to say, the cook threw in everything but the hair, horns, and holler. The pot held real meat, but also the heart, liver, tongue, and kidneys. What made it infamous were the brains, used to thicken the stew naturally, and the marrow gut, a milk-filled organ only edible while the calf was still nursing. That creamy richness turned the stew into something cowboys genuinely craved. And if that didn't test limits, this will. During Roundup, nothing was discarded, including the byproducts of castration. Instead, they became calf fries, later known as Rocky Mountain oysters. Seasoned, rolled in cornmeal, and fried in hot grease, they were considered a delicacy. Cowboys described the flavor as nutty and gamey, strange by modern standards, but on the trail, it was prized food. And when supplies ran thin, cowboys turned outward to the land itself. They hunted deer, wild turkey, and rabbits whenever they could. But survival stretched definitions fast. Snakes ended up on the menu, skinned and cooked over open flames. This part surprises almost everyone. Cowboys didn't just hunt, they foraged. Wild plants became ingredients when nothing else was available. One of the most creative examples was sheep sorrel pie. The plant had a sharp, lemon-like bite, used as a stand-in for citrus fruit they couldn't get. It wasn't luxury, it was ingenuity. Even desserts were born from scarcity, proof that cowboys adapted constantly, squeezing flavor out of whatever the land offered.
Cup of coffee. Don't want to stand in line to get it nor pay $20 a cup. I don't blame you. Folks, we are going to show you the tips and the tricks, go in depth, answer your questions about cowboy coffee, the smoothest cup around.
If food kept a cowboy moving, coffee kept him awake. It was as essential as a horse. The cook boiled water, dumped in handfuls of ground coffee, and let it rip. No filters, no mercy. The result was thick, black, and legendary. They called it six-shooter coffee, with the joke being that it was strong enough to float a revolver. Harsh, bitter, and necessary. Before long, coffee on the trail got an upgrade. Arbuckle's Ariosa coffee changed everything. Instead of roasting green beans over a fire, cooks now had pre-roasted, glazed beans that stayed fresh longer and tasted consistent. That reliability mattered. No guesswork, no ruined batches. Arbuckles became the standard on cattle drives, quietly revolutionizing one of the most important rituals of trail life. Whiskey wasn't carried for fun. It was medicine. Cowboys used it to treat coughs, dull pain, clean wounds, and even attempt to counter snake bites. It burned going down, but it was often the only option available. Drinking for pleasure came later in town. On the trail, whiskey was practical, measured, and tied directly to survival. Despite the calories, the diet had serious gaps. Vitamins A and C were almost non-existent. Scurvy was a real threat after months without fresh produce. The Cowboys relied on canned tomatoes as one of the few defenses. And the real killer wasn't gunfights, it was disease. Poor sanitation led to cholera and dysentery, turning food shortages into life-threatening risks. Add it all together, and the picture gets darker. Exhaustion was constant. Camps were dirty. Accidents were common. Illness spreads fast. Every day was a physical test with no safety net. The food didn't just fuel the work, it defined the struggle. So that peaceful campfire scene? It doesn't survive the truth. Real cowboy life was built on discipline, shared hardship, and relentless ingenuity. Food wasn't romantic, it was strategic. Survival always came first, and the reality was far tougher than anything Hollywood ever showed. Cowboy food wasn't about comfort, it was about endurance, grit, and refusing to waste a single thing. From rock-hard biscuits to calf fries, every meal told a survival story. So what shocked you the most? Drop it in the comments, and if this blew your mind, like and subscribe. More real history is coming.